Alright, so today we're going to do a brief introduction about the color Prism, which is the consensus mechanism for the color network. We're going to talk about a little bit about why we decided to create it this way and what it even is or how it's different than existing blockchains. Let's jump in. So during the design phase of Color Prism, we had two main goals. One is, can we improve consensus time and still maintain the security and integrity of the blockchain? And two, can we combat cartels and centralization risk while still leveraging a DPoS model? So how do we improve consensus time? Well, our answer is with cluster consensus and leagues. And I'll explain what those two things are. So leagues and cluster consensus. So essentially, as this giant picture explains, no more sequential block processing. We want to process multiple blocks in clusters or in parallel. So the process is as follows. So step one, a prime block builder is selected, as well as lead block builders. So those are going to be the ones that actually perform the consensus within each individual league and for the network. Step two, each league will perform consensus in parallel within its own league. And then step three, 5 to 7 blocks confirm this effort and send a small Boolean true-false statement back to the network. So what you have here is each individual league, which has 7 nodes within it, are each of those leagues are working together. And they confirm within their league. So that makes it so even though you have a bunch of traffic going between the leagues, the actual network itself, you're only confirming with 7 nodes. So less network chatter, etc. So here we have a comparison table of the difference between EOS and Color Prism. And we think that with our times in preliminary testing with our alpha phase, that we've actually got consensus time to less than half of what EOS has currently implemented. So moving right along. So the consensus participants. All right, so one, we have block builders. So those are like block producers in EOS, except we have 49 of them, a little bit more than 21. The higher the number, I think we believe that it helps maintain a little bit more decentralization and lowers cartel risk slightly. But we have other ways of dealing with that as well. The backup block builders, some of them are still compensated. The top 28 backups are still compensated. And then from then on, everybody else just does it as a chance to become one of those or as an altruistic nature to the network. And then the prime and lead block builders, as we explained earlier, they're the ones who are actively providing consensus for the current round in each league. And then logic runners and council members, we will explain that in our governance video, which should be next week or the week after. So, block builder consensus. So the prime block builder will build the blocks, as we explained. The block builders across the 7 leagues will begin cluster consensus, and the 7 block builders confirm the block simultaneously and start the next block. So just kind of what we went over. So again, how are the block builders initially selected? So just like in a lot of other DPoS systems, they have to run a campaign. If anybody's familiar with ARC or some of the other DPoS systems where they actually have to have a platform to sort of run their campaign, what they'll bring to the network, those sorts of things. But they must also provide a high contribution index, and we'll explain what that is. Almost. So how do we combat cartel risk, which is one of the first questions that we wanted to combat. More nodes is a slight way to do it. The more nodes you have, the harder it is to have them all to collude together. We believe 21 is just too few. Adequate governance. We're not going to get too much into that in this slide, but by having adequate governance, we can combat some of the cartel risk. And then thirdly, the contribution index. So having contribution index part of how someone gets selected and elected will definitely play a part there. And we'll explain what that is on this slide. So the contribution index. So what are the components of the contribution index? So the coin amount staked and pledged is 40%, so just like in any other DPoS system. However, we're adding two different things. System performance index is sort of taken into account in other blockchains. If you have enough dropped packets, people just aren't going to re-elect you, but we just bake that right into our formula. And then community contribution. Now this could be anything from referrals to, if the community thinks you're doing something bad, there will be mechanisms within our governance to say, hey, this person, we believe that these two entities or these 3 or 4 entities are colluding, provide evidence to the community, and that will hurt their reputation and possibly kick them out of being a block builder for color. So this is just an example table of the first 4 elected block builders. So you see coin staked, position, contribution index in the community, and then the position and the performance index. So as long as you're not dropping a lot of blocks, and that should be relatively high, that's good. The coin staked or pledged to them, and then how the community feels about the node in general, so sort of their reputation. So all those 3 things combined, that will determine their spot on the list. Okay, so prime block builder. So for a given block, as we described earlier, a block builder and 6 lead block builders a prime block builder and 6 leads will provide the consensus, and at the end of the round, a new prime block builder is selected based on a pseudo-random algorithm. And it will produce a block before another one is reselected. Yep. And then they will be rewarded. And the reward is split with the council, the treasury, the pixel, logic runners. And the reward breakdown looks something like this. So we want to keep pixel kind of at the top of our reward structure to make sure community engagement stays high. That's one of the primary goals of the color platform. The council, which is basically sort of master node system, folks who vote and stay engaged in the community that way through our governance model. And then the treasury is sort of what they're voting on, so where that money goes. And then network support, now that's split between our logic runners. So yeah, so here's the reward breakdown. So the pixel is 40% because one of the main goals of the color platform is to keep community engagement high. And by exchanging pixels with everybody, that's going to sort of seed that process. The council, which is basically the master nodes for the network. So they're going to be voting on proposals in the treasury and various other functions, doing community reputation for the contribution index, those sorts of things. The treasury is the funds that the council votes on, so how that money gets allocated. And then there's the network support, which the consensus and the logic runners are part of. And that is it for the short introduction for the color Prism. If you have any questions, jump in Telegram or shoot us an email.